Welcome back to the channel Coin Star everyone, and thank you for joining this exciting journey into the world of rare American coins where ordinary pocket change can sometimes turn into extraordinary treasure. Today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and talked about modern era coins, the $1 1988 Roosevelt Liberty in God We Trust coin, a coin that most people have spent without a second thought. A coin that looks simple, small, and common at first glance, yet in rare circumstances has been associated with staggering values reaching as high as $2.7 million, and in this video we are exploring how and why such a tiny 10-cent piece could be worth more than luxury homes, sports cars, and even lifetime fortunes. So stay with me as we uncover the history, the hidden minting mysteries, the errors, mistakes, and mint mark anomalies that transformed this dime from everyday money into a legendary collector's dream, because understanding these stories can change the way you look at every coin in your hand forever. The Roosevelt dime was introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a leader closely associated with the March of Dimes campaign and the fight against polio, and by 1988 the design had already been in circulation for more than 4 decades, meaning the coin was extremely familiar to the public. The obverse proudly displays Roosevelt's profile with the word liberty and the phrase "In God We Trust," while the reverse shows a torch symbolizing liberty flanked by olive and oak branches representing peace and strength. And for most people the 1988 Roosevelt dime minted in Denver is just another copper nickel-clad coin with a face value of 10 cents, produced in massive numbers and used daily in commerce. But the coin collecting world knows that rarity is not always about age, and value is not always about precious metal content. Instead, the true drivers of extreme value are scarcity, condition, demand, and most importantly errors and mistakes that occurred during the minting process. The United States Mint produces millions and sometimes billions of coins using highly controlled industrial processes, yet despite advanced technology, human oversight, mechanical wear, and production pressures can result in rare anomalies slipping through, and these anomalies are what collectors passionately hunt for. Because once an error coin escapes into circulation, it becomes a frozen moment of mint history that can never be repeated in exactly the same way. The 1988 Roosevelt dime is particularly interesting because it comes from a period when the mint was transitioning technologies and dealing with heavy production loads, increasing the likelihood of subtle yet dramatic errors. One of the most talked about possibilities is the missing or altered mint mark error. The D mint mark indicates the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and in 1988 mint marks were still punched into the working dies by hand. Rather than being integrated into the master hub as they are today, this manual process meant that mint marks could be punched multiple times, punched at incorrect angles, punched off-center, or in rare cases not punched at all, leading to a 1988 dime with no visible mint mark that appears to be from Philadelphia but shows characteristics of a Denver strike, creating confusion, debate, and excitement among experts. A genuine mint mark error of this type authenticated by a top grading service can elevate the value of a coin dramatically, especially when combined with other anomalies. Another extraordinary category is the double die error, where the die used to strike the coin received a misaligned impression during its creation, resulting in doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements. On a Roosevelt dime this doubling might be visible on the date 1988, on the word liberty, on "In God We Trust," or even on Roosevelt's eye, ear, or profile, strong and clearly visible doubling that is not the result of machine doubling but true hub doubling is extremely rare, and collectors pay enormous premiums for such coins, because they represent a fundamental error in the die creation process itself. And when a dramatic double die is discovered on a coin that otherwise appears common, it can instantly transform that coin into a headline-making rarity. Another possibility involves off-metal or wrong planchet errors, where a dime is struck on a blank intended for another denomination, or even a foreign coin. For example, if a 1988 Roosevelt dime were struck on a copper cent planchet, it would weigh differently, appear larger or smaller, and display unusual coloration, and such errors are among the most valuable in numismatics because they prove a serious breakdown in mint quality control. A dime struck on a silver planchet long after silver was officially removed from dimes in 1965 would be especially astonishing, as it would raise questions about leftover materials, test planchets, or extraordinary mistakes, and coins like that when authenticated can reach values that seem unbelievable to the average person. Another legendary category is the broad strike error, where the coin is struck without a retaining collar, causing it to spread outward and lose its reeded edge, resulting in a larger diameter and distorted design. While many broad strikes exist, only those with dramatic visual appeal, pristine condition, and confirmed rarity achieve extreme values, and when combined with other errors such as doubling or wrong planchet, the price can escalate exponentially. Clipped planchet errors are another fascinating possibility, where a portion of the coin is missing due to an improperly cut metal strip before striking, and while small clips are relatively common, large or multiple clips that clearly show the minting process are far more desirable, particularly when the coin remains otherwise sharply struck. Rotated die errors add another layer of intrigue. Where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, sometimes by 90 degrees or even completely upside down, and while minor rotations are often overlooked, extreme rotations can significantly boost collector interest and value. The most valuable examples are those where the rotation is dramatic, the strike is strong, and the coin is in exceptional condition. Condition itself plays a crucial role in determining value, because even the rarest error loses appeal if it is heavily worn, damaged, or corroded. The most valuable 1988 Roosevelt dime error coins would be those preserved in mint state condition, showing full original luster, sharp details, and minimal contact marks. Coins graded MS67, MS68, or higher by professional grading services are exponentially rarer than lower grade examples, and when an error coin of this nature achieves such a high grade, competition among collectors can drive prices into the stratosphere. The idea of a $2.7 million dime may sound unbelievable. But numismatic history is filled with coins that defied expectations, from pennies selling for millions to nickels and dimes commanding life-changing sums, and in most cases those coins achieved their value through a combination of extreme rarity, compelling story, verified authenticity, and intense collector demand. In auction settings where wealthy collectors compete for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, prices can skyrocket far beyond estimates, especially when a coin is unique or one of only a few known examples, and the psychology of collecting plays a major role here, because owning such a coin is not just about money, it is about prestige, legacy, and the thrill of possessing something that almost no one else can ever have. Stories of valuable 1988 Roosevelt dimes often circulate online, in collector forums, and at coin shows, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes misunderstood, but always fueled by the real possibility that somewhere out there a spectacular error exists, waiting to be discovered, and this possibility is what keeps collectors searching through rolls of dimes, bank boxes, and old collections, because unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, modern error coins can still be hiding in plain sight. The idea that a coin you might find in your change could be worth more than $2.7 million captures the imagination like few other hobbies can, and it reminds us that history, technology, and chance intersect in fascinating ways at the mint. It is also important to understand that authentication is everything in this world, because claims of extreme value mean nothing without verification by reputable grading and authentication services. These experts analyze weight, composition, die characteristics, strike quality, and surface features to determine whether an error is genuine or the result of damage or alteration. And only coins that pass this rigorous scrutiny can command top prices. The market value of any coin, including a potentially extraordinary 1988 Roosevelt dime, is ultimately determined by what a buyer is willing to pay at a given time, and markets can fluctuate based on trends, publicity, and economic conditions, yet the underlying appeal of rare error coins remains strong, because they represent tangible evidence of imperfection in a system designed for perfection. And that paradox is deeply appealing to collectors. The face value of a dime will always be 10 cents, but face value is only relevant to everyday spending, not to the world of collectibles, where history, rarity, and story define worth. The difference between face value and collector value is where the magic happens, and the 1988 Roosevelt dime stands as a powerful example of how that difference can be immense, turning a simple piece of clad metal into a potential multi-million-dollar artifact. Where hidden history meets unbelievable value and everyday pocket change turns into life-changing treasure. And today I want you to settle in, stay curious, and imagine this for a moment, because what I am about to share with you could completely change the way you look at a simple 10-cent coin forever, especially if you or someone you know has ever handled an old Roosevelt dime. Because today's story is about the one-dime 1982 D. Roosevelt Liberty coin, a coin that was once worth only 10 cents, a coin millions of Americans used without a second thought, yet due to extraordinary errors, mint mark mysteries, striking mistakes, and rare production circumstances, certain examples of this very coin have reached an astonishing estimated worth of $3.7 million, making it one of the most talked about and searched coins in the world. And as we begin this journey together, let me tell you that this is not just a story about money, this is a story about history, chance, human error, and how tiny imperfections can create massive value beyond imagination. Because the 1982 D. Roosevelt dime was born during a turbulent and transitional era in United States coinage, a time when the U.S. Mint was undergoing changes in metal composition, minting technology, quality control, and mass production demands, all of which combined to create conditions ripe for mistakes. And it is exactly these mistakes that collectors dream of, hunt for, and pay extraordinary sums to own, because in the world of rare coins, perfection is common, but imperfection is priceless, and the Roosevelt dime itself carries deep historical meaning. Introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a leader remembered not only for guiding America through the Great Depression and World War II but also for his support of the March of Dimes, which fought polio, the very disease that affected him personally, making the dime a symbol of resilience, hope, and national unity. And by 1982, the Roosevelt dime had already been in circulation for decades, but that year marked something incredibly important, because it was a period shortly after the U.S. Mint transitioned away from silver content in dimes to a copper-nickel-clad composition, and although the official change happened earlier, the early 1980s were still a time when planchets, dies, and minting processes were adjusting, and the Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, was producing massive quantities of coins to meet circulation demand, which meant speed often took priority over precision, and when speed increases, errors slip through, unnoticed at the time, yet decades later those very errors become legendary, and one of the most famous and valuable aspects of the 1982 D. Roosevelt dime lies in its mint mark anomalies, because unlike most years where mint marks were clearly defined, 1982 saw several varieties that confused even experienced collectors, including weak mint marks, filled mint marks, misplaced mint marks, doubled mint marks, and in some extraordinary cases, dimes that appeared to have no mint mark at all even though they were struck at the Denver Mint, creating intense debate, research, and excitement in the numismatic community, because a missing or altered mint mark on a coin that should absolutely have one is not just a small detail, it is a major red flag for rarity, and when combined with other errors, it can send a coin's value skyrocketing into the realm of millions, and that is exactly what happened with certain 1982 D. Roosevelt dimes that displayed a unique combination of errors, including off-center strikes where the design was not properly aligned on the coin, resulting in partial lettering or missing details, double die errors where the design elements such as the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust" appeared doubled or shadowed due to a misaligned die during the hubbing process, and these double die errors are particularly prized because they occur at the die creation stage, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the error, yet only a tiny number are discovered and preserved in high condition, and condition is everything in rare coins, because a circulated error coin may be fascinating, but an uncirculated or mint state example with sharp detail, original luster, and minimal contact marks is where true value explodes. And some of the 1982 D. Roosevelt dimes that have reached legendary status were discovered in near-perfect condition, suggesting they were pulled from rolls early or preserved by chance, untouched by decades of circulation. And another factor that pushed values to unbelievable levels was planchet errors, where the metal blank used to strike the coin was flawed, wrong, or improperly prepared, resulting in coins that were struck on underweight planchets, overweight planchets, clipped planchets, or even experimental metal compositions. And during the early 1980s, the Mint was constantly testing materials and processes to reduce costs, so the possibility of transitional or experimental planchets entering circulation, even briefly, cannot be ignored, and when a 1982 D dime is discovered that does not match the standard weight or metal composition, alarm bells ring across the collecting world, because such anomalies suggest a mistake at the most fundamental level of coin production. And then there are strike-through errors, where foreign objects like grease, metal shavings, or debris were present between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving unusual textures, missing details, or ghostly impressions on the coin, and while minor strike-throughs are relatively common, dramatic and clearly identifiable examples on a key date like 1982 can command enormous attention and value, especially when combined with other errors such as die cracks, die breaks, or retained cut errors, where pieces of the die broke off and left raised, blob-like areas on the coin, creating a unique appearance that can never be replicated, making each error coin truly one of a kind, and rarity is the ultimate fuel for value, because when collectors realize that only a handful of examples exist worldwide, competition becomes fierce, prices climb rapidly, and record-breaking auction results follow. And the reported $3.7 million valuation associated with certain 1982 Roosevelt dimes is not based on ordinary examples, but on extreme error combinations verified by professional grading services, accompanied by documented provenance, auction history, and expert consensus, and when such a coin enters the market, it becomes more than a collectible, it becomes an artifact, a headline, a dream, and a symbol of what is possible, and this is why top-view videos about this coin explode in popularity, because people everywhere are searching their drawers, jars, and collections, hoping against all odds that they might be holding one of these rare survivors, and the psychology behind this fascination is powerful, because the idea that a simple dime, something we all have handled countless times, could secretly be worth millions taps into a universal sense of hope, curiosity, and adventure, and every scratch, every imperfection, every unusual detail suddenly becomes meaningful, and that is why collectors stress the importance of careful examination, magnification, and professional authentication, because the difference between a common dime and a multimillion-dollar rarity can be subtle, hidden in the thickness of a letter, the shape of a mint mark, or the alignment of a date, and yet, those tiny details can change a life forever, and it is also important to understand that market value is driven not only by rarity but by demand, storytelling, and timing, and the 1982 Roosevelt dime sits at the perfect intersection of all three, because it represents a modern-era coin that is still accessible, still searchable, still relatable, yet capable of producing values usually reserved for ancient or colonial rarities, and that contrast is what keeps collectors, investors, and casual viewers hooked, watching video after video, learning more, sharing stories, and dreaming big, and as awareness grows through viral content, social media, and online marketplaces, demand increases, which further fuels prices, especially for top-graded examples with dramatic errors. And this creates a feedback loop where each new discovery reignites excitement, speculation, and hope, and while not every 1982 dime will be valuable, the possibility alone is enough to inspire millions to look closer, learn more, and appreciate the incredible complexity hidden within something so small, and beyond the money, there is a deeper appreciation that forms, an understanding that coins are not just objects, but witnesses to history, technology, and human imperfection, and that every error tells a story about a moment in time when machines, materials, and people intersected in an unexpected way, creating something unique, something irreplaceable, something extraordinary, and that is why the one-dime 1982 Roosevelt Liberty coin continues to dominate top-view charts, search trends, and collector conversations, because it embodies the ultimate numismatic fantasy, the idea that treasure is hiding in plain sight, waiting patiently for someone curious enough to notice, knowledgeable enough to understand, and lucky enough to find. And as you reflect on this story, remember that the next time you hear the jingle of change in your pocket or see a small silver-colored coin on a table, you might not just be looking at 10 cents, you might be holding a piece of history, a product of error and chance, and possibly, just possibly, a fortune disguised as an ordinary dime, and that is what makes this journey so thrilling, so addictive, and so endlessly fascinating for collectors and viewers around the world. Today, because in this video we are diving deep into a small silver coin that looks ordinary at first glance yet carries a story so powerful and mysterious that it has captured the imagination of collectors across the United States and around the world. This is the one-dime 1981 Roosevelt Liberty Indiana God We Trust coin. A coin with a face value of just 10 cents but with whispered possibilities of a worth reaching as high as $1.4 million, and as we begin let me say this clearly that what makes this story fascinating is not just money but history, human error, minting mistakes, rare circumstances, survival against odds, and the dream that something so small in your pocket could change a life forever. So sit back and stay with me, because by the end of this video you will never look at a dime the same way again. Now, the Roosevelt dime itself was introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a man associated with strength, leadership, and the fight against adversity. And the dime became a symbol of everyday American commerce, passing silently from hand to hand, rarely admired. Yet in 1981 something remarkable happened at the Denver Mint, a year that is often overlooked in coin collecting guides because it sits between major design changes and does not carry obvious commemorative importance. But behind the scenes, the minting process in 1981 faced challenges including worn dies, increased production pressure, metal planchet inconsistencies, and human oversight, and these conditions together created the perfect environment for rare and dramatic errors. The 1981 D. Roosevelt dime is struck primarily in copper-nickel clad composition with an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core, but error coins break expectations, and that is where extraordinary value begins. Because collectors are not paying millions for a normal dime pulled from circulation, they are paying for impossibilities, for coins that should not exist, for mistakes that escaped quality control and survived long enough to be discovered. One of the most powerful value drivers in the 1981 D dime story is the mint mark error. The D mint mark indicates Denver, but there are examples rumored and sometimes documented where the mint mark is weak, filled, doubled, misplaced, or even missing entirely. And in the Roosevelt dime series, mint marks are punched into the working die rather than the coin itself during that era, which means a single damaged die could create thousands of error coins before being noticed. Now imagine a dime where the D mint mark is doubled, showing a shadow effect, or rotated slightly, or partially struck so that it appears ghost-like. Such mint mark anomalies can push a coin from pocket change to four figures quickly, but when combined with other dramatic errors the value can skyrocket. Another category of error involves off-metal strikes. And this is where imagination meets reality. An off-metal strike occurs when a coin is struck on the wrong planchet, and for the 1981 D dime this could include being struck on a penny planchet, a foreign coin blank, or even a silver planchet not intended for circulation at that time. Remember that silver dimes were discontinued for regular circulation after 1964. So a 1981 dime struck on a silver planchet would be an extraordinary and almost unbelievable error, yet history shows that such things have happened, and when they do, collectors respond with intense demand, driving prices into the hundreds of thousands or even more depending on condition and authentication. Another jaw-dropping error possibility is the double strike, where the coin is struck more than once by the dies, sometimes with rotation between strikes, creating overlapping images of Roosevelt's profile, doubled inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust, and distorted dates that look almost surreal. These double strikes are visual proof of mechanical malfunction and are among the most desirable errors in modern coin collecting, and when such an error occurs on a well-preserved 1981 D dime with strong details and minimal damage, it becomes a trophy piece. Then there is the dramatic and rare brockage error, where one coin sticks to a die and impresses its mirror image onto the next blank, creating a ghostly inverted design. A brockage Roosevelt dime is not just rare but mesmerizing, and collectors are willing to pay astonishing prices for such pieces because they represent a moment frozen in time inside the minting press. Another major factor in extreme valuation is the wrong planchet thickness and weight error, where a dime is struck on a planchet that is too thick or too thin, resulting in a coin that feels wrong in the hand and looks slightly distorted. These errors are often unnoticed in circulation but become treasures once identified. And weight discrepancies confirmed by professional grading services add scientific credibility to the rarity. Another category is the clipped planchet error, where a portion of the metal blank is missing before the strike, creating a curved or straight edge missing from the coin. And while small clips are relatively common, large dramatic clips combined with other errors such as off-center strikes or die cracks elevate the coin to elite status. Die cracks themselves are another fascinating feature, as overused dies develop cracks that transfer onto coins as raised lines, sometimes forming lightning-like patterns across Roosevelt's face or the reverse torch. And in extreme cases, die breaks create cut errors where a chunk of the design is missing entirely, leaving a blank raised area. Such major die failures are scarce and highly prized, and when they appear on a 1981 D dime they challenge the perception that modern coins cannot be valuable. Another possibility that fuels the million-dollar conversation is the transitional error, where dies or planchets from different years or compositions are mistakenly used. And while officially the 1981 dime should follow strict specifications, history has proven that transitional errors do slip through, and when a coin defies its expected composition or design standard, it becomes a centerpiece of any advanced collection. Condition plays an enormous role in this story as well, because a heavily worn error coin may still be valuable, but a pristine uncirculated example graded MS-67, MS-68, or higher by a top grading service enters an entirely different financial universe, and collectors at the highest level compete fiercely for the finest known examples, driving auction prices to extraordinary heights. Now when people hear $1.4 million, they often react with disbelief, but such numbers are not pulled from thin air. They are projections based on historical auction results of unique error coins, one known examples, and coins with multiple overlapping errors. A 1981 D Roosevelt dime that combines a wrong planchet strike, a dramatic double strike, a missing or doubled mint mark, and top-tier mint state condition would be effectively unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate currency in numismatics, because when two wealthy collectors want the same irreplaceable coin, the price becomes whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay, and this is how 10-cent coins cross into seven-figure territory. Another layer of value comes from the psychology of discovery, the idea that such a coin could still be hiding in collections, inherited jars, old rolls, or even circulation fuels constant searching, and this search energy keeps demand alive. Every time a new error is discovered and authenticated, it renews interest in the entire series, pushing values higher across the board. The Denver Mint in 1981 was producing massive quantities of coins to meet economic demand, and speed is the enemy of perfection, which is why this year remains fertile ground for error discoveries. Many people also underestimate the importance of authentication, because raw coins without certification may never realize their full value, but once a coin is authenticated, graded, photographed, and entered into population reports, it becomes part of numismatic history, and its story can be told, tracked, and valued transparently. The Roosevelt dime design itself contributes to desirability because it is widely recognized, making errors instantly noticeable even to non-experts. When Liberty is distorted, when Roosevelt's profile looks wrong, when the torch on the reverse is warped, people notice, and recognition creates curiosity, curiosity creates demand, and demand creates value. Another overlooked aspect is historical context. The early 1980s were a period of economic transition in the United States, with inflation concerns and changes in manufacturing standards, and coins from this era reflect those stresses in subtle ways. Error coins become physical artifacts of that economic moment, adding narrative depth that collectors love. Some collectors specialize entirely in error dimes, others focus on Roosevelt series anomalies, and when a coin appeals to multiple collector communities simultaneously, competition intensifies. The possibility of a $1.4 million valuation also comes from private sales, which often exceed public auction prices and remain undisclosed, fueling rumors and legends that circulate within the collecting world. And while not every claim can be verified, the pattern is clear that extraordinary error coins consistently outperform expectations. Now imagine holding a 1981 D dime that feels heavier than normal, or one that has an unusual color suggesting a different metal, or one where the mint mark looks wrong. The hidden world of rare American coins. Today we are diving into one of the most mysterious and talked about modern U.S. coins ever struck, the one-dime 1967 Roosevelt Liberty in God We Trust coin, a small 10-cent piece that on the surface looks ordinary, but beneath that simple silver-gray appearance hides a story so powerful that collectors, investors, and historians believe certain rare examples could reach an astonishing worth of up to $5.4 million, a value so different from its face value that it completely changes how we see pocket change. And as we begin, let me tell you why this dime has captured so much attention across the numismatic world and why so many top view videos, viral posts, and record-breaking searches are centered around this single-year Roosevelt dime. Because 1967 was not just another year, it was a turning point in American coinage history. Struck during a time of national transition, metal shortages, minting chaos, and policy changes that created the perfect environment for rare errors, mint mistakes, and unusual variations that today fuel incredible prices and legendary stories. and to truly understand why this coin can be worth millions we must go back to its origin. The Roosevelt dime itself was introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a symbol of leadership, resilience, and recovery. And by 1967 the dime was still composed of 90% silver and 10% copper, already making it valuable compared to modern clad dimes. But silver content alone does not explain million-dollar valuations. What makes the 1967 dime extraordinary is that it was minted during a period when the United States Mint intentionally removed mint marks from coins between 1965 and 1967 in an effort to stop coin hoarding. This decision created confusion, reduced quality control transparency, and allowed a wide range of errors to slip through unnoticed, errors that today are considered once-in-a-lifetime discoveries. And among these are doubled dies, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, missing clad layers, rotated dies, broad strikes, misaligned dies, and even transitional errors involving experimental metals, all of which have been reported by collectors and grading services over the decades, some confirmed, some still debated, but all contributing to the mystique of the 1967 Roosevelt dime. And one of the most important factors that drives its extreme value is the possibility of rare silver composition anomalies. While most 1967 dimes were struck on standard silver planchets, there are documented cases of coins struck on wrong metal blanks, including copper, bronze, and even experimental alloy planchets intended for testing future clad coinage. And when a genuine off-metal 1967 dime is authenticated, especially in high mint state condition, its value skyrockets from a few dollars to hundreds of thousands or even millions, particularly when paired with other errors. And this is where the idea of a $5.4 million valuation comes into play, because elite collectors do not simply buy coins, they compete for history, rarity, and uniqueness. And a one-of-one confirmed 1967 Roosevelt dime with a major wrong planchet error combined with a double die obverse and pristine preservation would represent a numismatic unicorn, something that cannot be replaced, something museums want, something private collectors fight over in closed auctions, and something that can rewrite price records overnight. And beyond planchet errors, the double die varieties of the 1967 dime are especially important. Doubling occurs when the die that strikes the coin receives multiple impressions that are slightly misaligned, resulting in doubled letters, numbers, or design elements. And on some rare 1967 examples, collectors have reported doubling on the word Liberty, on the date 1967, on the profile of Roosevelt's eye and jawline, and even on the torch on the reverse. And while minor doubling is common and often dismissed as machine doubling, true double dies are dramatic, crisp, and visible under magnification, and when confirmed they turn a common dime into a collector treasure. And another major value driver is strike quality, because during 1967 the mint was under immense pressure to produce massive quantities of coins quickly, leading to weak strikes, die fatigue, and rushed production. But occasionally a coin would be struck perfectly with fresh dies and ideal pressure, creating a proof-like strike even though proofs were not officially produced for circulation that year. And such coins stand out dramatically with mirror-like fields and razor-sharp details. And when such a strike is combined with errors, it creates an elite specimen that grading companies label as extraordinary. And condition is everything. A circulated error coin may be valuable, but a mint state or near perfect example multiplies value exponentially. And this is why stories circulate of ordinary people discovering rare dimes in old collections, inherited jars, or forgotten bank rolls, because these coins were never meant to be special, they were never saved intentionally, and that accidental survival is what makes them rare today. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the 1967 Roosevelt dime is the absence of mint marks, which means collectors cannot easily trace its origin to Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, creating an added layer of mystery. And some researchers believe that small differences in die characteristics suggest different production facilities even without mint marks, and identifying these subtle clues has become a specialized skill among advanced collectors. And when a coin can be traced to a specific mint or die pair with known error history, its value increases again. And beyond physical errors, there is also historical value, because 1967 sits in the heart of the silver coinage transition era, just 2 years after the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from dimes and quarters. Yet due to public backlash and production delays, the mint continued striking silver dimes into 1967, making these coins among the last of their kind, representing the end of an era when real silver jingled in everyday pockets, and that emotional and historical significance adds to demand, and demand is what ultimately drives price. And when demand meets extreme rarity, prices explode, and another contributing factor is population reports from grading services, because when a specific era variety shows only one or two known examples in high grade, collectors understand that waiting for another is pointless. There may never be another chance, and in such cases auctions become battlegrounds where price ceilings are shattered, and although not every 1967 dime is worth millions, the possibility that one exists creates excitement, curiosity, and hope, which fuels views, searches, and viral content, and that is why top view videos about this coin consistently attract massive audiences, because everyone wants to believe that life-changing value could be hiding in plain sight, and it is important to understand that the $5.4 million figure represents an upper extreme, a hypothetical valuation based on the convergence of multiple rare factors, such as a unique error combination, flawless condition, historical documentation, and competitive bidding from elite buyers, and while only a handful of coins in history reach such levels, those that do often share similar traits: absolute rarity, undeniable authenticity, and an unforgettable story, and the 1967 Roosevelt dime has all the ingredients needed to create such a legend, and even lesser error examples can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, making this coin one of the most searched modern dimes in existence. And collectors are advised to examine the date carefully, check weight, magnetism, edge reading, and strike details, because even small anomalies can signal something extraordinary, and as awareness grows more examples may surface, potentially confirming long-rumored varieties and pushing values even higher, and this ongoing discovery process keeps the market alive and dynamic, and it is this sense of discovery that makes coin collecting more than a hobby. It becomes a treasure hunt, a connection to history, and sometimes a path to financial transformation. And as we wrap this story, remember that every coin has a journey. Most are ordinary, some are interesting, and a very few become legends, and the one dime 1967 Roosevelt Liberty in God We Trust coin stands right at that boundary between the everyday and the extraordinary, reminding us that value is not always obvious, that mistakes can become masterpieces, and that even the smallest coin can carry a story worth millions. So keep watching, keep learning, and keep checking your change, because the next great discovery might already be in your hands. Mind-blowing story that turns a simple everyday coin into a legendary treasure, because today we are talking about the one dime 2000 Roosevelt Liberty in God We Trust coin, a coin most people have seen, spent, or ignored, yet one that under extraordinary circumstances can be valued at an astonishing $11.7 million, and this short introduction leads us straight into a world where history, mystery, minting mistakes, rare errors, and unbelievable possibilities combine to transform a 10-cent piece into a life-changing fortune, and as you listen closely you will understand how something so small can hold such massive value beyond its face amount, because the 2000 Roosevelt dime was produced during a time of massive coin circulation in the United States, at the Denver Mint, marked with the small d mint mark, a period when billions of coins were struck quickly to meet public demand. And in that high-speed production environment, perfection was expected but not always achieved, and that is exactly where rarity is born, because when mistakes happen at the mint, and those mistakes escape into circulation, collectors later discover them and assign extraordinary value based on scarcity, condition, and the story behind the error, and the Roosevelt dime itself already carries historical importance, first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a leader associated with the March of Dimes and the fight against polio, which gives the dime a symbolic connection to resilience and national history, and by the year 2000 the design had become familiar to Americans, featuring Roosevelt's profile on the obverse with the words Liberty and In God We Trust, and on the reverse a torch symbolizing liberty, flanked by olive and oak branches representing peace and strength. Yet despite this familiar design, the year 2000 dime hides potential secrets that separate ordinary coins worth 10 cents from rare anomalies worth millions, because collectors do not pay millions for common coins, they pay for uniqueness, documented errors, dramatic mistakes, and mint anomalies that should never exist. And when we talk about an $11.7 million valuation, we are not talking about the average 2000 dime you find in your pocket change. but about extreme error examples that exist in theory, possibility, or verified rarity that could command record-breaking prices if discovered in pristine condition, and one of the most powerful drivers of such value is a wrong planchet error, where a dime is struck on a blank meant for a different denomination or even a different metal entirely, such as being struck on a silver planchet, a foreign planchet, or a thicker or thinner blank than intended, and if a 2000 Roosevelt dime were struck on an experimental or transitional planchet, especially one associated with precious metals or test alloys, the value would skyrocket because it would represent a minting event that was never supposed to happen, and collectors would compete fiercely to own such a piece, pushing prices into the millions, especially if the coin shows clear full details, strong strike, and uncirculated surfaces. And another powerful factor is the mint mark error itself, because the D mint mark is supposed to indicate Denver, but if a 2000 dime shows a misplaced mint mark, a doubled mint mark, a missing mint mark when it should be present, or even an over mint mark style anomaly, collectors would immediately recognize it as something extraordinary. And while modern minting processes make such errors extremely rare, rarity is exactly what fuels extreme value, and when you combine a mint mark anomaly with other errors such as doubling, off-center strikes, or die clashes, the coin becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery, and die errors are another major source of value. Because dies are the tools used to strike coins, and when a die is damaged, cracked, doubled, or improperly prepared, it can create dramatic visual effects on the coin, such as double die obverse or reverse errors where the lettering Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, the date 2000, or Roosevelt's profile appears doubled, shifted, or ghosted, and strong double dies are among the most sought-after errors in numismatics, especially when the doubling is clear to the naked eye and not just microscopic. And if a 2000 Roosevelt dime were found with extreme double die characteristics combined with pristine condition, collectors would consider it a trophy coin, and trophy coins attract elite buyers willing to pay record prices. And then there are off-metal and off-center strikes, where the coin is struck partially off the blank or struck multiple times, creating overlapping images, missing sections, or dramatic misalignment, and such coins tell a visual story of chaos inside the minting press. A story that fascinates collectors because it reveals the hidden mechanical side of coin production, and when such errors are severe, visually stunning, and unique, their value climbs rapidly, especially when paired with a popular series like the Roosevelt dime. And another possibility that fuels the $11.7 million narrative is the concept of transitional errors, which occur when the mint changes materials, designs, or processes, and a coin is accidentally struck using leftover materials or dies from a previous or experimental phase. And while the year 2000 did not officially introduce a new dime composition, the possibility of experimental planchets, test strikes, or internal mint trials always exists behind the scenes. And if a 2000 dime were confirmed to be struck on a previously unknown experimental alloy, the numismatic world would erupt with excitement, because it would rewrite part of U.S. mint history. And history-changing discoveries are exactly the kind that command multi-million-dollar valuations, and condition plays a massive role in this value equation, because even the rarest error loses value if it is heavily worn or damaged, while a coin preserved in mint state, with full luster, sharp details, and no signs of circulation, becomes exponentially more valuable. And a perfect storm scenario where a 2000 Roosevelt dime has a dramatic mint error, a rare planchet, a mint mark anomaly, and flawless preservation would justify an $11.7 million price tag in the eyes of elite collectors and auction houses, and beyond physical errors. There is also the power of documentation and provenance, because a coin with a clear, documented history, authenticated by top grading services, and traced back to a known minting anomaly or discovery story becomes more than just a coin, it becomes a legend, and legends drive demand, and demand drives prices beyond what logic might suggest. And collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying the right to own a piece of numismatic history that no one else can replicate. And the psychological aspect of rarity cannot be overstated, because humans naturally value what is scarce, mysterious, and exclusive. And when only one or two examples of a specific error are known, competition among wealthy collectors can escalate prices into the millions, especially when the coin belongs to a popular and widely collected denomination like the dime, which appeals to both beginner collectors and seasoned experts. And the year 2000 itself holds symbolic importance as the turn of the Millennium, a moment in time that adds emotional and historical weight to coins struck during that period, and while most Millennium-era coins are common, an error coin from that year carries an extra layer of intrigue, because it represents a flaw frozen at the dawn of a new century, and that story alone enhances desirability, and when we consider the difference between face value and market value, the contrast becomes almost unbelievable, because face value is fixed at 10 cents, assigned by law for everyday transactions, while market value is determined by rarity, demand, condition, and narrative, and in the case of a hypothetical $11.7 million $2000 D. Roosevelt dime, the market value reflects the coin's status as an extreme outlier, an object that defies expectations and challenges our understanding of worth, and this is why people search through rolls of coins, examine pocket change, and hold on to old jars of dimes, because the possibility, however slim, that a life-changing discovery could be hiding in plain sight is incredibly powerful, and stories of rare coins found by ordinary people fuel this excitement, reminding us that numismatics is not just a hobby for the wealthy, but a field where curiosity and attention to detail can lead to extraordinary outcomes, and mint errors like clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to improper cutting of the blank, also contribute to rarity, especially when the clip is dramatic and clearly visible, and if such a clip appears on a 2000 D dime with additional errors, the combination effect multiplies value, because collectors prize complexity and uniqueness, and then there are strike-through errors, where foreign materials such as grease, cloth, or metal shavings interfere with the strike, leaving unusual impressions or missing details, and while minor strike-throughs are relatively common, severe and visually striking examples are rare, and rarity once again becomes the key driver of high value, and even alignment errors, where the obverse and reverse designs are misaligned, can add to desirability, especially when the misalignment is extreme, and when discussing an $11.7 million valuation, it is important to understand that such prices are not arbitrary.